Okay, everybody, we're going to get started. We've got all the laggards at the end. Yes, please. Yep, we just have to get started or we're going to be late. So if you wouldn't mind taking your seats, that'd be fabulous. I'm going to introduce Speaker Craig in one moment. And I don't have your bio, so I better get that. Where is that? Thank you for those of you who are back here on time. I thought maybe if I started speaking where people would come in, they'd hear me from outside. So, working on it. Okay, we will...
It's just that to go.
Yes, it is. We will get started. The others will just have to come in. I'm sorry, Craig. What I might do actually while we're waiting for people to come in is I'll thank some people. I was going to save this to the end, but so we're not digging into Craig's time. I just would like to thank our organising committee for today. So that includes Renga from Jefferies. Are you here, Renga? He's just outside. Okay, and I wanted to thank Brenton Mengerson from Tarek Technologies as part of our organising committee. So Brenton's up here, he's doing good biochar projects. Jeffrey's doing good biochar projects. Also, Heather Holmes-Ross has been part of our organising committee. Mayor and Dr. Heather Holmes-Ross, thank you very much for what you've done. Thank you to our board that have been part of today and organising as well. So thank you to Nigel and thank you to Craig and Phil. So I do have bottles of wine for all of you, and while we're waiting for people to come in, I'll invite you all up at the end. I think we'll give them then. I was hoping a few more people would have come in by now, Craig. Well, I was wasting time, but so Craig is talking about the carbon negative hydrogen, having your cake and eating it too. I asked Craig to do this presentation because he is an excellent engineer and has a great understanding of this and has been really important to ANZBIG. He is the Director of Environment and Regulatory Systems within CETA, based in New South Wales, who are developing an advanced technology for bio and carbon negative hydrogen, and is the Principal Consultant for Catalyst Environment Management in Newcastle. There is a project that has been announced in the Coorong District Council. It's a $425 million hydrogen project. And so I've asked Craig within his talk to address how our technologies compare with the likes of that and the benefits of biochar technologies to make hydrogen versus the technologies used to make this, but is also covering off on a lot of other things. So thank you, Craig, and over to you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And the ANZBIG board's worked so hard on this. I don't know if anyone's mentioned it, but it's all voluntary. So, what I think you said earlier this morning, I think it bats well above its average for pound for what we've got, and hopefully we can get some good resources in to advance the roadmap and resources to move forward. So I'll need to move fairly quickly because, as always, I wish I was saying less is more, but with me, more is more. I'm going to run through the why, how, what, when, where, who kind of attack to this. But the big angle with our technologies compared to conventional thermals is that we are circular and regenerative. And it's a really big thing when global food production is sort of at the key in the heart of social licence for bioenergy. So big key point of difference that we're taking to government. And I'll compare it to conventional hydrogen, which I don't know if people know about what we're using it for and what we're making it with at the moment, and when you actually see that, you can see how this just dominoes through the entire economy, through just about every sector that matters. Okay, I'll lead out with a couple of reasons why. Why biohydrogen? It's probably the cheapest, particularly through these thermal technologies, and that's mainly because of the multiple value outputs of it compared to really, really high cost, limited sort of stuff when you're dealing with all of the other options for both grey and black hydrogen, and also green hydrogen with electrolysis, which I'll go through in a minute. So particularly with our system, we think that we can get biohydrogen down to a very low cost. But the big one, greener than green, negative. That's probably the number one angle with this sector. So if we can get syngases that can be economically and commercially at scale driven into derivatives for hydrogen and a whole stack of other related compounds for economy, we can go carbon negative with it and help that transition to net zero, while also basically taking the blanket off the planet. We heard this morning, obviously, from Annette and many others about, and also from Martin in the very first talk, about how important this is in the transition, and it's way beyond just power and even beyond transport. So that's the big one there. So I guess someone said something to me about this yesterday. I've used it in a couple of talks in Victoria. Think back 30 years and those bricks that we were carrying around called mobile phones at the time. No internet, no things with it. The key is to be able to have a disruptive changes and be able to adapt with those, but adding value. And we heard that through so many talks today. Lynn McDonald's talk in agriculture, and we've heard with all the built environment talks, adding value to all this stuff and putting economics on the transition. If we can use the market against itself, or for itself, however you want to put it, we can really look at transitioning on that. And the key here is that some of the conventional things about combustion and incineration, I see that as last century technology. It's pretty well what's been putting all the carbon in the sky since 1850. We're going the other way. Something here, I guess, as a point, and this is not to have any shots at all about one thing, but Grandma was right, a little bit of everything, not too much of any one thing. You want to have your eggs in different baskets, and at the moment, there is a huge push for a single direction. And the cost of going through electrolysis is challenged in taking it to scale. Two of the world's biggest electrolyser companies were hoping to get their costs down significantly within the first couple of years towards 2025, and not quite heading that direction, actually going not the way they want. But it is at the heart of most green hydrogen. So on top of all that, transport. So that's about actually the compression of it and the movement of hydrogen if you make it. And so I'll go through about how that all works. At the heart of our industry, of course, is this 3 billion year old miracle that's given us the atmosphere we've got. I stood in a lecture with David Suzuki in the 90s, and he said, he's holding an apple, and he said, if I had a lacquer layer just on this apple, that is the thickness of our atmosphere. And what we have done as we've moved into a modern industrialised economy is what used to take one man 6 months to chop down in a forest, we can do in a few hours or a day with a machine now. We are changing the rate of what we can put into the atmosphere at such a scale that we've changed it, and we saw with all the records now there and all the evidence with Annette this morning. But what's key here is when you actually look at these building blocks of plant growth, these sugars that make carbohydrates from carbon dioxide in the sky and water vapour with the light from the sun, we basically get a whole stack of hydrogen and carbon all put together. And there is the opportunity here to break those down. Lignin obviously being the most complex of those, we've seen our hardwoods, but in the simpler things like grasses and whatever, you're seeing more of the cellulitic or hemicellulose type of materials. And so it's simplified photosynthesis, you can just see it's loaded with it. H2O, water, 2 protons and an oxygen, very dense though, plenty of it. Problem is, it's mainly in the oceans. 1% of our water on this planet is fresh water. Most of it's in ice. There is very little water on the planet, so it's hard to make it. Carbon and hydrogen sits at the nexus between everything. Food, water, energy, and all our materials we make. If you think about everything from the seat you're sitting on, the phone in your pocket, it's made from fossil carbon, whether it came from oil or coal or gas. Just about all of it's come from that up till now. Can we turn it around? So conventionally, hydrogen's been sort of used in energy, but as a feedstock to making chemicals, petrochemicals, synthetic fuels, reductants, whatever. Best way to describe this is, came from a late night experience with my kids leaving the Lego laying out. I've stood on too much of this, but that's the best way to describe it. I think they're the building blocks. So, and the aim is to separate these out and get the yellow ones and the green ones and the black ones all where we need it from the jumble. Can we do that economically? At the moment, so hydrogen is really critical because across so many industries. So right now, food, agriculture, so ammonia for your fertilisers, for all the food we eat, that's coming from natural gas. Mining, explosive, ammonium nitrate. So the Orica plant in my hometown of Newcastle, they're making all the ammonium nitrate for the mining sector across the country and also for fertilisers. Plastics, olefins for these things is driven from this too, so they're hydrocarbons. Green chemicals across most sectors. And then the challenge now as we go forward is this storable, dispatchable energy and fuels. We heard Matt Martin this morning in that first talk say it's the storage that's actually the key to the energy challenge. The biggest race on the planet right now is storage. It's not just about the deployment of renewables at scale, it's about the storage. And that's where Mother Nature's giving us a battery. It's already there. It's dispatchable. But we've got to be able to do it at scale. I'll just go back there. On the right-hand side, you'll see there, so we've got hydrogen fuel cells, hydrogen combustion engines. There's a bit of a race on between the two, but fuel cells will probably win out. But when it goes to combustion, then you're starting to look at methanol engines, which Maersk, one of the biggest shipping companies on the planet, is moving towards methanol engines. And ammonia engines, the whole Japanese economy is heading towards that way to replace their coal-fired combustion towards ammonia engines. And you can see there, a lot of this stuff's going into industry, and that's where it's being used at the moment, including petroleum refining. In terms of tonnages, you're talking tens of millions of tonnes. MTOE is oil equivalents, whereas just the other one's just millions of tonnes. So that's what we call a Sankey diagram, a flow diagram of materials. I won't dwell on that. These slides will be available too, so I won't dwell on things. Oh, coming back. Okay, people might have heard all this talk about different colours, the hydrogen rainbow they call it. So basically if you split it into two, you've got renewables on one side and you've got fossils on the other. If you sink it into the ground, you get CCS with it, that's blue hydrogen. Blacks from coal, browns from brown coal, greys from natural gas. Green hydrogen though, at the moment it's mainly talking about wind, solar and hydro. You barely ever hear anyone talking about hydrogen, but they will be. So grey hydrogen, this is the single biggest thing. So steam methane reforming, SMR from natural gas is currently the widest around the planet. It's typically under pressure and it produces a mixture of carbon dioxide and hydrogen. We know in our industry is syngas, and the holy grail is to try and make a clean syngas. If you can do that, then you can make all these things. And so Fischer-Tropsch runs you into all of the conventional hydrocarbon biofuels. Methanol runs through dimethyl ether is a big one everyone's looking at. Polyolefins, which is the building, that's basically all your plastics. Power generation, we mentioned before, hydrogen engines versus conventional straight. If you've got a clean syngas, you can go straight into a gas engine. Right now we burn fossil fuels and we boil water with it, and then we run a turbine. 34% combined cycle gas turbine is currently the best you'll get. If you go straight to a gas engine without cleanup, or significant cleanup, you might be talking 50%. So straight away we could really decarbonise the planet rapidly just from doing that. Big one here, renewable natural gas. So this is, people are talking about this a fair bit. So syngases can be used to reconstruct. So these are these Lego bricks. And if we start building, C to CH4, you've got methane. And if you displace it with nitrogen, you get NH3 or whatever else, you can make ammonia. These are the monomers to build other things. What matters is the hydrogen-carbon ratios. And the really cool thing about pyrolysis is that you leave half that carbon behind. When we put it through a machine, put it in the black box out the back end, half the carbon reports down into the biochar, and the other half goes into the syngas. And if you can get a really clean syngas, that CO can go to CO2. There's a whole stack, the race is on at the moment with direct air capture and all these other technologies, trying to work out if we can sink it besides stick it in the ground. Landfilling, it's the dumbest thing we could do with it. DAX is $800 US a tonne. It's insane. CO2 equivalent. What we could do is make things out of it. So Mercedes-Benz is currently investing in the US in a company called 12, making polycarbonates out of it. So as all these things emerge, enhanced weathering, you heard from Annette before with basalt rocks, it's not just basalt, anything that makes carbonate. Limestone, nature's got the solutions. That's where that all came from. It's just processes that existed before. Currently, ammonia, oil and gas in Australia is where it's all being produced from. This is fossil hydrogen production, grey or black. A little bit of brown down in Victoria as well, in the order of about 500,000 tonnes per annum. Thing I wanted to point out here, I'm a water engineer and a surfer, and I hate seeing the ocean used as a sewer. And no one is asking, where's the water coming from and what are you doing with the brine? I've got no issues with desal if we do something smart with it and we don't just stick all the crap in the ocean again. We should have learnt by now, after a century of doing that with every other thing we put in it, microplastics. Latest stat on microplastics, there'll be more plastic in the ocean than fish by 2030, in particle number, which is terrifying. But anyway, desal, could we be irrigating it and making food and going to biohydrogen with it instead of going through electrolysers that have got a pretty long journey ahead of them to go to scale and be low cost, with all the co-benefits it brings, and so you've got three of the most energy intensive processes in a row with green hydrogen at the moment. You've basically got desal, of which there's a number of desal plants in Australia that they haven't been used. The water utilities have been waiting until they go into massive droughts to be able to make them viable. There's one here in South Australia, $1 billion facilities, idle. It's only through the assumption of almost free clean energy through renewables that those are becoming more and more viable, and desperate need, of course, with climate impacts. So, but that comes with big pipeline infrastructure. If you're going to dispose of brine properly, you're talking about deep ocean outfall with diffusers, just like proper wastewater plants. And that's not something you're going to see across Southeast Asia with all those coral reefs and mangroves if we go and do this. We need to be thinking about how we do all this a lot better. The other thing is, and I normally talk about regulatory stuff actually, even though I'm an engineer, I mainly work in approvals. I was at a hydrogen conference in Newcastle last week presenting there, and these guys got up and said, so they're relying completely on electrolysis to have really cheap energy at scale, and offshore wind is the cheapest. So they're trying to roll those out. They've got all these offshore wind zones around the country, but there's a 5-year process to get to a commercial licence, and then you've got to build it. And you've got all the materials, and you've got to have all the ramp-ups of everything else. I mean, we're going to need it without question, but we're going to need that for the grid. We could be using that for all the industries and everything else. I think electrolysis, yeah, I'm not anti-electrolysis. I want to see better things done with water. Okay, so critical things. How do we make as much as we can, as cheap as we can, as fast as we can, with the lowest environmental impact? So keep memory of that graph earlier, carbon negative. Nature tells us, photosynthesis has been doing it forever. Evolution's a wonderful thing, normally points to the right direction for things. So biohydrogen processes, we're not the only ones, so we're thermochemical, if I had to put it into a category. You've also got anaerobic digestion, difficult to scale, hard to try and get that into the millions of tonnes type of scale. If we're going to try and decarbonise the planet, we need to go to gigaton scale or millions of tonne scale minimum. Very, very difficult to get AD to that, and you've still got the issue of trying to deal with digestates that are very high in nitrates, runoff, and EPAs are having trouble with that. We're symbiotic with that industry though, because we can increase biomethane by putting hydrogen and biochar in there as reductants or accelerants for microbial growth, and the International Energy Agency is saying 10 to 25% increase in biomethane by doing that. So we can actually work with those sectors as well, stabilise their digestates and take them somewhere else. A lot of work going with algae and things too through those other photosynthetic processes, but we'll stick with the thermals here. Is there enough of it? We heard before, yeah, at least 50 million tonnes commercially accessible minimum, and up to 6.6 sustainable without competing with 6.6 gigatonnes of drawdown without competing with food security. Really important point. So yeah, we can go a lot bigger, like Bex is talking about, but 700 million hectares of land would be required to do that. And it's the main reason why simple bioenergy with carbon capture and storage that Annette talked about earlier, it's one of the main reasons there's opposition against it, because there's just not enough. We're going to 2050 with 10 billion people. We can't feed, the carrying capacity of the planet, from a lot of the ecologists and environmental economists, is around 5.5 billion. We're already way past it. And it's no surprise when you see the impacts. So we can enhance food production. Biochar is adding to it, circular, regenerative, and it's different to linear. So the big push we're talking about is moving from linear systems to circular systems. You heard Lynn talk this morning about the need to go circular. So I won't stay long on this except to say this is nature's battery. There's a stack of synergies between them all. I mentioned one there about biomethane and anaerobic digestion earlier. We can provide carbon into battery technologies, including sodium carbon batteries if we're going to have brine going somewhere. As long as it doesn't go in the ocean and it doesn't just go in landfill, all good. Okay, thermal technologies. At its very, very simplest, combustion, we make heat, and when we boil water with it, that's what we've been doing. Pyrolysis converts, as you increase temperature, things go from solid to liquid to gas. Gasification does what the name says, it turns most of it to gas. Char yields are lower, so the challenge is how do we get as much biochar through a gasification system and be able to get these syngases to do good things as well as getting biochar. So that's been the holy grail for the last decade or two that everyone's trying to solve. Mel put this one up before, so I won't dwell on it. Solid, liquid, gas and heat. There's the temperatures and the differences, but when you combust, you're getting carbon dioxide and hydrogen, and water vapour mainly, and all the other NOx gases and other things. So you're going after heat. But when you go to gasification pyrolysis, you're starting to get syngases that are the chemical building blocks, and you move away from carbon dioxide to carbon monoxide and hydrogen as the main gases. The limit of pyrolysis, though, has been that it's hard to scale. You've also got, the more you've got with combustion, you've got really high gas cleanup. Most of these $600 million incinerators that you see with waste energy you hear about, they're mainly gas cleanup. The huge amount of that CapEx and OpEx is in scrubbers, electric precipitators, all kind of venturis, all these different bits of equipment that we've got to put in to try and deal with that, thermal oxidizers. And that's because when you've got air and you want oxygen to do that oxidization, 80% of air is nitrogen. And it turns to NOx when you combust it. So you get nasties with all that, causes photochemical smog. It's the cause of all the problems in India and China that has no controls on that. If we had more people, we'd have trouble too because we've got rubbish emissions controls on our vehicles. But yeah, so big on cost. So conventional pyrolysis and gasification technologies are indirectly heated. I've been wanting for years to work out a way where I could bring a beer to the stage as a prop. Okay, and this one's a carbon neutral beer apparently too. It's from the East Coast. So I had it the other night, a place with stones called Largo. Okay, when we heat up to make pyrolysis at the moment, we tend to heat up a can. We limit the oxygen going inside it, we heat the outside. That's indirect heat transfer. We're trying to heat inside. The hard part of that is you get hot and cold spots, you get consistency issues. You heard today people talking about the challenge of the industry trying to get consistency of product. That's the challenge, trying to get that, and then to scale it. It scales by surface area. But if everything inside was in contact with something, that's scaling by volume, and you can do a lot more in a smaller area with less stuff. So at the moment, you've got gasification using air, pyrolysis sort of having trouble to scale because of this technical limitations, typically around 1 to 5 tonnes an hour. You can't really get over that. Incinerators run at hundreds of tonnes an hour if they need to. So you've got an economies of scale issue in trying to replace that. When we go to oxygen-blown gasification, there's $1 billion air separation unit involved. So you've normally got these units next to coal mines, like coal gasification is kind of like where that's been in the past. Gets a much higher quality syngas, no dilution with nitrogen, whereas the air-blown one diluted with all that stuff we just talked about. So that limits scale up, limits economic capability, and there's no sequestration, and you end up, and with combustion systems, all you get is toxic materials. So with these two slides, I won't dwell on them at all. They're just a traffic light table I put together in a DA we did a couple of years ago for our stuff. And it compared incineration with conventional air-blown gasification and pyrolysis in terms of economics and environmental. And so incineration's got its pluses, it's very high scale, it's very mature there, that's the main reason everyone's going towards it. It's got high ability to deal with moist feedstocks, all these, anything that's green, good, red, bad, orange in the middle. Environmental, well, that's why I'm whinging about incineration. It's all red, including the toxic ash dams. I've got a huge number of them around our way up in the Hunter, off the back of our coal-fired power plants. So who's building biochar, bioenergy technologies that are specifically targeting syngas derivatives? So there's a whole stack of technologies, and if anyone wants to look at all biochar technologies, There was a talk yesterday I gave, and there's a lot of stuff on our website too to look at that. That's available, and I went through a lot of the Anne's big companies with that. With this one though, there's only really a couple of us that are specifically looking at trying to make these derivatives by having a very clean syngas. And that takes you into the RNG, dimethyl ether, and all these other sort of things, sustainable aviation fuel. These guys commercialised, and this is our former chair, Rainbow Beta. Those guys are targeting, they're working with a group called Optimal to try and make this kind of material. So they're a modular system. They're probably first going to have a crack at this. Where's Nigel? He was here a minute before. I don't know if... this is the last couple of slides. Hopefully, I don't know if others are going to have a crack at this. There's a lot of continuous systems that come along. You've got to be continuous. You can't do batch, and a lot of biochar systems are batch, but all moving towards continuous. We've seen the Metamorph guys, they've got a great system running too. But the challenge is getting a syngas, though, that you can go to scale with without the dilution. So we've been working on this for about 15 years. Last several years we've been building a pilot and getting it approved. It took 3 years to go through regulation in New South Wales because it was built for incinerators and everything else, and we've had to try and work through that. We don't do pyrolysis or gasification, we do both. We do chemical and thermal looping, so we don't use air at all, and so we don't have all that scale-up issue. And what we do is we pyrolyse the feedstock. We don't gasify the feedstock, so you don't lose it all going up to gas. You still get the really high yield of about a third of it going into biochar, and then we gasify the syngas that comes off. We oxidise that to go up to get the combustible gases. And because we scale by using a hot sand instead of other things, we are able to go to scale by volume, and we can go in a single unit 5 to 40 tonnes an hour. So our smallest commercial unit will be as big as the largest rotary kilns on the planet for pyrolysis at the moment. So this unit you're looking at there, that's about half tonne an hour. That's our R&D centre up in Glen Innes. So there's the Lego bricks again. We're trying to basically pull those down into clean syngas and biochar. Because we don't dilute with nitrogen, we end up with a concentrated syngas, a lot more hydrogen, to nearly double what we normally get. It's about 50% by volume. And very high purity CO, which means you've got medical grade carbon dioxide. We could immediately displace fossil CO2 into the beverage and industry sector straight away. So that's, all of you, I can have a beer and feel good about it. So that'll be a good thing. And direct heat transfer, as I said, that's where the thermal efficiency is very high. No billion-dollar air separation unit to go to methanation at scale. No wastewater, black water treatment plants. Cogeneration plant to run it. It's supposed to run autothermal. So where we're at pilot. We're about to commence now. It's been a long process to get there, but we will be running. We've actually run it. We're commissioning. We're up and running in April. So what's that mean though for hydrogen production? This is the big one, and we didn't know this till we compared it. We put a letter into New South Wales Treasury in December. So that's their target for 2025, 3,000 tonnes per annum. Our smallest unit at 5 tonnes will pull out that entire New South Wales hydrogen target in one little plant. That, to give you some idea, that's about 10,000 tonnes of in-feed probably. Oh, no, it's 30, sorry. I've got 160,000 tonnes of green waste in the local 3 council areas, just in our local council area. Just green waste. So, full of weeds and all other things. I've been working in sort of trying to do markets with mulches and everything else for 30, 25 years, and it's difficult. You want to get high-grade stuff. It's good to diversify markets too. So, this, in terms of drawdown, compared to direct air capture, 36,000 tonnes for Project Mammoth is one of the biggest ones in Iceland, the Orca, $80 million project, 4,000 tonnes, $2 million for ours. So, that's it. That's the plant. It's fully approved. Thanks.
Fabulous, Craig. Thank you. I know Craig gave a similar presentation yesterday. Is there any points of clarification? We do have a panel discussion coming up. Yes, Victor, please.
What do you think the kilogram price for hydrogen is going to be when you're talking $2?
We can get down to that, and we can do it going sort of 30. We can be there in 8 hours. We think there's sub $4 a kilo initially. Currently, they're struggling to get on $10 a kilo. Natural gas price that way. Great Australia. Long as food keeps the growing planet natural gas.
Pretty exciting, isn't it? Exciting to see this technology come online and just be a game changer. So thank you, Craig, for your work in this space and what you do. And thank you. Here's a bottle of wine. I know we can't take it home on the plane, so I might have to help him drink it. Okay, so just mind-blowing some of this technology that's coming out, and I know a lot of you have been really excited to hear all the different presentations. So now we have a case study from Riverland Almonds Hulling talking about a biochar journey from Philip Henschel. Philip is an experienced management and business development executive. If I put my glasses on, I'll be able to read it better. With extensive experience in establishing and managing SME operations with specialist interests in agribusiness, he's CPA and MBA qualified with experience in general management, financial management, and sale and acquisition of business across a variety of industries, including ag, horticulture, food, manufacturing, and technical and IT. This is why Phil has made a very valued addition to the board, Anne's big board, but also because he's got the smarts. He's been involved in a biochar project. So we're looking forward to hearing all about it. Thank you, Phil.
Well, thank you for having me. That wasn't quite the intro that I was expecting. Really today, I'm here as a director of Riverland Almonds Hulling, but it's also a journey with my other role, which is a director of Century Orchards, which is an almond grower. And basically, it's just the simple story of our journey over the last 15 months as we've tried to turn those almond husks and shells into this biochar, and the troubles, issues, some of the challenges that we've had in actually making it real. So we're located, Riverland Almonds Hulling's processing is located at Lindsay Point, which is in Victoria. And you say, well, why am I up here as a... It's because we regard ourselves as South Australian. We're 2 kilometres inside the Victorian-South Australian border. During those wonderful days of COVID, we were one of those cross-border communities. The staff at Larragon, we all live in South Australia, had to have their noses jabbed every day as they crossed the border, and it was quite a traumatic time. As I said, we're South Australian owned and operated. Our shareholders are 3 major growers, almond growers. Century Orchards is one of them, and we all live and based in South Australia. The closest town is Renmark or Paringa, and that's 25 kilometres away. And we're surrounded by almond orchards. And the reason we're surrounded by almond orchards is in 1972, I think, 2 families moved from the McLaren Vale district and said the best place to grow almonds is where you've got lots of water and lots of sunshine. And that was on the River Murray. And that was really the beginning of the almond industry, commercial almond industry in Australia. And 6 years later, they thought, well, we're producing so many almonds, we need to start, instead of putting them in a truck and sending them all down to Adelaide to be processed, we better start processing them here. So they established processing plant in 78, and in 2023 we changed our names just recently from Larragon to Riverland Almonds Hulling. So a lot of people know us as Riverland Almonds Hulling. So that's as I talk through this, I will sometimes wear a Riverland Almonds Hulling hat, and sometimes I'll wear a Century Orchards hat, because we're very entwined. So what do? Our growers grow almonds, and that's what they're looking like actually at the moment. We're just starting harvest. You can see the shell and kernel and the hull around there. At Larragon, we get those delivered to us progressively over the next 6 months, and we turn them into 18,000 tonnes of kernel or kernel equivalent, and we get 36,000 tonnes of almond hull and shell. Not all the almonds go into kernel. We actually keep some in shell. We call it 18,000 tonnes of kernel equivalent. The Chinese and the Indians love their almonds delivered in shell. So that's what we do, and as you can see, we've got 36,000 tonnes of this. And you can see it, that's how we stockpile it there, and it just keeps building up during the season. So why did we go down this biochar route? We have, as you just saw, a substantial amount of byproduct. We currently supply it to the cattle industry feedlots. So when you get your grain-fed steak, it's not always grain-fed. There's a substantial amount of crushed almond hull and shell in that along is part of the feed mix. So we have 2 or 3 B-double road trains coming every day, taking hull and shell to all parts of the country. But the almond industry, for that you might know, has increased rapidly over the last 5 or 6 years. And as those orchards start to mature, there's going to be more and more almonds produced, but more and more hull and shell. And we think we need to start looking at alternative markets. One of the things we could do is turn it into compost, but to turn 36,000 tonnes of almond hull and shell into compost is a big operation, and it was not very economic. So 18 months ago we looked at alternatives, and Brendan Sidhu, our Managing Director, came across the biochar, and as soon as he came upon that I thought, oh, that's a good idea. So I've sort of jumped on the bandwagon with him, and we decided to put up a pilot biochar plant. So for us, we see 3 benefits for why biochar works for us as an economic proposition. So this whole thing for us is, as a business person, this needs to make a return on investment, first and foremost. So there are 3 benefits. Sale of biochar, you've seen many of the bitumen, livestock feed enhancers, the fertiliser. CO2 removal certificates, international carbon removal certificate, and I'll talk more about them. So they're worth quite a lot, and help to make the product biochar economic. Somebody asked why biochar has been around for decades, centuries, and why has it not become mainstream yet? And I believe one of the reasons is that people couldn't really get it to be economic. But one of the things that's tipped it over the line is the ability to get CO2 removal certificates, corks. Without them, our project wouldn't be economic. It's an important element. We're using Puro.earth as our carbon removal standard and registry. It's quite a complicated process. It's quite extensive auditing. We use a group called Biochar to help us manage through that, because it's a whole lot of skills and knowledge that we don't have. Businesses are buying the corks as part of their carbon strategy, and I think Annette had that in her slide earlier today. And one of the issues is Australian carbon credits don't recognise biochar. Again, that was covered earlier today. So we were relying on CO2. The other important thing is heat from the biochar process, and if you can use that. Now, our growers deliver us these, they harvest in March and April. Often it starts raining, the almonds get wet, and dealing with wet almonds is not good. A, it slows down the process. B, the quality of the almond and the output is not good. So we'd have to do a lot of drying, especially in a wet year. This year, touch wood, we're having a dry year and it's all going well. Last year, we had a pretty wet year. The year before was even worse. So we do a lot of drying of almonds and almond hull and shells with LPG gas. If we can use heat from the biochar process, we've saved a huge cost. And probably the other thing is we use a lot of electricity in the processing plant. If we could use the heat for cogeneration, then again that makes it economic for us. But to go to cogeneration, well, as I said, is a big investment, and it's something I'll talk about a bit more. So here's our journey. Here's the picture of the biochar machine. It's built by Metamorph, and it's installed and working. This picture here, you can see the feeding. So big loader comes in every 2 hours, tops that up, goes through the machine, and it comes out here as biochar. It's roughly a third. So for every 3 tonnes of that, we get a tonne of that. So we only signed contracts in November 2022 with SDA, who are now Metamorph. They delivered their machine in May. We had a lot of labour and plant issues, so we really didn't get going on the trial until late September. And in November, after some tweaking the machine, we're now getting really consistent biochar out. At the moment, well, up from November until the end of this week, we've only been running on day shift, so 7 hours a day, 200 kilograms an hour coming out. Because it's harvest time and we're about to move to 24/7 processing in the processing plant, so we'll now then start running the biochar plant 24/7. So we'll soon be producing quite a lot of biochar. So that's our biochar at the moment. So we have biochar that we've made, and we're starting to sell it slowly. But we haven't been in a rush to market it because, first of all, and this is one of the things, is we need to have a commercial quantity available. People want a regular supply that are going to use it, so we've got to demonstrate that we can make a regular supply. It's sort of we're actually building demand as we go, to match our supply. I want to talk about some of the issues, sort of 3 or 4 issues that we've had in this that we sort of anticipated, but it's something that we've had to work through, and I hope that people that start on this journey will have a better idea or can learn from some of our experiences. We've had to find the right people to help us through this. One of the most important things I did was join ANSPIG in May last year and start to mix with the community here of consultants and talk to people about their experience and who they've used to help them through this process, because we didn't know anything when we started. So the EPA, confusion education, we're just over the border in Victoria, so we're dealing with the Victorian EPA, but the South Australian EPA and New South Wales, talking to some of the other people, there's a confusion and education required. There's different approaches in different states. Are we waste, or is this a byproduct? We think this is a byproduct, not a waste. And if it's determined as a waste, it's a completely different set of rules. I don't think the EPA legislation and approach knows how to deal with biochar. It wasn't something on their radar when they wrote the legislation and their guidelines. And it's a really big thing for ANSPIG, I think, to help companies negotiate their way and set up some standards. And Ben Carr, who's been helping us, is going to talk to you a bit more about that, I think, in the next presentation. Also, are we generating heat or are we generating waste? Different rules if you're primarily there to generate heat. And the other thing is that I think increasingly as the industry becomes aware and the EPA and governments become aware is different feedstock has different risks and different qualities, and that needs to be determined in assessing whole process. Our feedstock is very pure. We deliver it just like this to cattle, and the cattle eat it. Almonds industry is all the almonds are tested. They have to meet European standards for chemicals. So we know from the almond industry point of view, so there's a lot of chemicals we can't use now in control of fungicides in the orchards, because if we want to sell the almonds to Europe, which is a big market for Australian almonds, we have to meet the European guidelines in terms of residual MRL amounts. So we know that our feedstock's very pure. But other people's feedstock is not so pure, and I think that the EPA needs to factor that in. Moisture, water is required to quench and reduce the heat. You've got something that comes through at 500 to 700 degrees heat, and then it comes out, so that there's a lot of water that's required to quench. Our biochar comes out between 50% and 60% water, and biochar absorbs and retains water. You saw that stockpile of biochar out there. After a rain, you go out there and the moisture percentage has gone up quite a lot, and it retains it for quite a while. It doesn't easily evaporate. And so it's difficult to reduce the moisture. But everything, the whole industry and everyone talks about, and your cork standard all talks about dry tonnes. And so it's actually quite an operational issue to deal with. What are you producing in terms of tonnes? What's the moisture level? And to get that back into dry tonnes and have it as a reliable, consistent, auditable standard in a production process. And so that's sort of the things that we've sort of had to grapple with. To the extent that I've been drying almonds in my oven at home, measuring it, I've been doing trials, correlating it with some of the lab results, and then developing a table for the guys in the operations to measure it. It also means we're now selling and pricing biochar in cubic metres. The other one is for us, for a biochar producer, is building demand for bulk biochar. Currently there's no market for large-scale biochar. So our focus is on the local ag and horticulture. We have our growers who are very interested in using it for their almond, but lots of research on benefits, but farmers like to see local trials. And we are starting trials. We've got at Century Orchards, we've got trials with the Adelaide University on biochar, but again, that's going to take time to prove. In the meantime, we're building up the stock of biochar. So you've got the supply, you've got to build the demand. Do you go out and sell that demand to other people? We're also looking at enhanced biochar, so we're going to do some, by April we'll have our first lot of enhanced, which we're going to pyrolyse some minerals with the biochar. You saw some of that, I think some of the previous slides this morning talked about that. But then we're almost developing a fertiliser product, and we're not a fertiliser company. So again, it's better at perhaps finding a fertiliser company, another company to work in collaboration with to do that. Our business is about processing almonds. We're just trying to find a use for it. So one of the things we like to do is to encourage other businesses to take the raw biochar and incorporate it into their products and processes, especially now that we're starting to produce reasonable quantities of it. Okay. Issues economics, all three elements required to make it work. Biochar sales, corks, heat use, biochar plant and cogen electricity generation, those are multi-million-dollar investment. My dream is, if we can get the project, we're still in pilot phase, is to produce 10,000 tonnes of biochar heat, providing heat for drying our almonds and supplying our power to our plant and all our local growers' pumping power needs. And supply back some of that 10,000 tonnes as enhanced biochar to our growers for their full life cycle sustainability in the almond industry. increase their yield, reduce costs, and maybe with some corks to abate our other emissions and growers' needs. So that's 5 years' time. I hope I can say that's what we've implemented. So, thank you.
Thank you, Phil. That was a great case study, and if only that could happen faster, as we do need to accelerate what we're doing and speed it up to cool the planet. All of his colleagues are leaving. His talk must have been that bad. Do we have any points of clarification for Phil before he is keen to leave the stage? We do have a discussion session coming up, but do we have points of clarification? Yes?
I can't really disclose that. I can say that if we use all the heat and we sell almond shells for good price and get the corks, we can just make a return on investment at the size machine we're talking about, which is 200 kilograms an hour. Now, go up to my initial costings. If we go up to cogeneration and using that heat, the economics get better.
I think that's, where the consultants come in is, trying to design a fit-for-purpose system for yours. Phil's obviously had a look at a range of technologies available and made that work, and the particular technology is, if you use the heat energy, the economics look very good. Anyway, thank you very much, Phil, for your time in presenting that, and also what you're doing in the industry. And I think, it's a risk which we really trust as an industry is going to pay off for Riverland almonds, because some people look for these the biochar takeoffs and the corks before, and they've taken this risk because they see the benefits, and we know it will pay off. So, and we're here to support you, Phil. So thank you very much. So next up is Ben Carr, who's an environmental consultant. He is Victorian based, and I have asked if he can bring in any local South Australian examples. We had a panel, as I've mentioned, that we'll thank again, that really said we really need to know more about the EPA process, because that's one of the biggest barriers to our project. So we really look forward to hearing from you, Ben. Thank you. Over to you.
Thanks very much. Just get the technology working. Hope everyone can hear me okay. I said to Melissa I'll provide my own introduction because I was so slack I didn't actually send them any bio. Basically, I'm a consultant at the moment. I just work for my own company, Car Enviro. I've worked for Victorian EPA recently. 3 years ago, Victorian Department of Environment, West Australian EPA. I've worked in natural resource management systems, worked in private land conservation and voluntary in conservation organisations, and I've been a handyman and a young farmer even, so getting into it. I think we've gone through that. Yes, I've got a little prop as well. Guess what this is? Of course, it's biochar. I was actually inspired by Scott Morrison retiring from Parliament. I just like to say, this is biochar, don't be afraid of it. That's what I sometimes feel like telling the EPAs. This is biochar, don't be afraid, but don't be scared. Just a quick summary of my presentation. Just really, as I said, I'm from a small suburb on the west side of Adelaide called Melbourne. Forgive me for that. And so I'm not really qualified to talk too much about the South Australian environmental regulation. It takes a long time to get your head around the layering of the law and the regulations and the practices. So I'm going to use the Victorian system as an example, but this is sort of high level, okay? So to understand what they want and how they do it, and then you can apply that to your own industry and in your own states. So I'm not really going into too much detail in South Australia. So I'll be talking about environmental regulators, so basically the EPAs, all state and territories have one. And what do they want? You know, what are they about? Well, they obviously will tell you they want to protect the environment. The EPA's job is to protect the environment from the harmful effects of pollution and waste. But you've got to ask yourself, what do they really want? And what they really want is they want you, as the industry, to protect the environment. So the EPAs basically really don't want to have much to do with you if they don't have to. They want to leave you alone if they can, and they want you to protect the environment. So this is an important point. And I think it's, if you understand that, then you'll actually be able to operate biochar plants and develop biochar plants better. And also, there's all states and territories have these general requirements. They're called general environmental duties. They want you to meet the general environmental duties. They want you to hold any relevant permissions, if you need to hold permissions for biochar production, not to cause or spread any pollution, of course, and manage wastes and meet these things called the waste duties, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. And also not to cause problems for them. So they don't really want to be actively regulating you if they don't have to. And they don't want sort of problems if they don't exist. So they don't really want to have to deal with you too much. And the Victorian Environmental Protection Act was sort of overhauled in 2021. And what they do is they put a lot of onus on the duty holders, which are, people who hold permissions, to manage their own risks and to understand their own processes. So the onus is really back on you. Some sort of very, very high level sort of principles. These are the principles which will be underpin and which all environmental regulation basically in every state and territory is really based on in many ways. So recognising and understanding and applying industry best practice. So best practice is really what is known and appreciated as the best way of protecting the environment in that industry sector. Understanding industry state of knowledge. The state of knowledge is actually what is known and what's reasonably expected to be known about your industry. So your best practice guides, there's numerous bits of information when you delve into it about state of knowledge. Understanding your risks and managing these risks. ISFARP is an acronym that stands for insofar as is reasonably practical. It's a favourite EPA term. It means they need you to do your own environmental protection insofar as reasonably practical for you to do that. Environmental impact assessment is a fundamental part of environmental regulation. It's about assessing potential for impacts in permission applications, and environmental management is what you do once you've got your plants up and running. That's the ongoing sort of management of your site and systems. And there's basically in a lot of environmental permission processes, there's two stages. You apply to build it through an EIA sort of a process, an impact assessment process, and then you get an ongoing licence to operate it, and that's where your ongoing environmental management comes in. Again, different states have different requirements. Everyone has a different Environment Act. We're never going to get one set of unified environmental regulation across Australia. Permissions may be required to process and accept waste. Philip talked about this concept of waste. The concept of waste is built into a lot of environmental regulation. EPA in Victoria, the definition of waste is basically everything. So unfortunately, the almond hulls is a waste product sort of in Victoria, and so they define waste very broadly. So then they build other regulation about waste. Permissions may be required to incinerate or thermally treat waste. So in Victoria, the specific words actually includes thermally treat. So pyrolysis is included in an EPA permission. Permissions may also be required to produce energy from waste. So I've put this in. This is an example of the extract from the regulations. So this is the permission type, which covers pyrolysis in Victoria. The DEF is defined as immobilising, firmly degrading or treating waste. It's just given a code there, A02A. Sometimes, biochar producers don't recognise that they're triggering the need for an application. So encourage everyone to really have a good understanding of the regulation in different states and territories. And the permissions, the different permissions which might apply, all come with different thresholds, Sometimes you don't need one if you're only doing small. The terrible thing about this one in Victoria, there's no minimum threshold. So you could be pyrolyzing 100 kilograms a year and you'd still need that permission under the law. Quite a few people fly underneath the radar. So just some observations that I've made about involvement, some significant involvement in a couple of biochar projects, and when I was with EPA, basically trying to get them to understand what biochar was and how to regulate it. This is a key thing, the clean in, clean out. So if what you're making your biochar out of is clean, you'll have a lot less problems through the whole environmental assessment process. It's very important to get your head around your air emissions. If you've got one of these things, it's the chimney, then you're probably going to have air emissions, and there's a lot of criteria and thresholds and standards in regards to air emissions, and you've really got to get your head around that and speak to people who understand the requirements early. The waste classification, now different states deal with this quite differently. New South Wales and Victoria are reasonably similar in that they have a set of waste duties, and they require basically the old concept of you accept a waste and you process it and then you make a product. That doesn't exist anymore. In Victoria, if you accept a waste and you process it, you make something, what you make is a different type of waste. Then you've got to go through these different waste requirements and waste duties to basically show that the EPA that what you've made is safe to be used and safe to be used in how it's going to be used. I won't go into the detail of that, but the broad idea is waste classification and waste duties. And biochar is covered by many different relevant state-based standards, classifications, and there's national standards and classifications, and there's OzFig's own as well. So just some of the documents which might be applying to biochar. You've obviously got the industry group standard, you've got the European standard, this, which is the Australian standard for compost, soil conditioners, mulches, is also relevant if potentially a biochar is going to be used as a soil conditioner. This thing, which no one can read, of course, is critically important. That's actually used by EPA Victoria. That's the European Union's pollution standard. So in Victoria, if you're producing biochar and your biochar plant's got a stack, or if you're doing waste to energy projects, the stuff coming out the stack has to be demonstrated and tested to meet this, because the EPA Victoria consider that to be a best practice, an applicable best practice standard. There's a set of guidelines to do with testing of air and air emissions. There's another set of guidelines. These last two things are Victorian EPA publications. They're very fond of writing a guidance publication and making the consultants understand it and read it. And there's probably about 25 of those which could potentially be applicable, with a biochar sort of plant. Multiple different types of frameworks to be needed and understood. So this has come up on a number of occasions. It's pretty important. This relates back to the waste duties and the waste frameworks. You effectively have to be able to demonstrate that the biochar you are making is meeting applicable standards. In Victoria, there's another one of the problems in Victoria, and I'll actually relate to this example that I've given here in the extract. Just remember the regulations in all states were not written with biochar in mind, okay? So they weren't trying to incorporate biochar. A lot of things about biochar are included almost by accident. So there's a terrible thing in Victoria, which is a pre-classification of this waste type with the N205. This is what's the description of the waste type is residues from industrial waste treatment, disposal, operations including digestate, bottom ash and char. And in that little word there, I said to the EPA, do you really have to incorporate biochar made from clean feedstock under that? And they say yes. So they said that every piece of biochar in Victoria is actually given, it's pre-classified under this code, and what's more, it's actually given the highest possible waste classification that there is. So it's classified as a reportable priority waste. So I've actually just by transporting this into outside of Victoria, or actually transporting it, I've broken the law. So the biochar is classified as a very dangerous waste in Victoria, which is clearly ludicrous, basically. Ludicrous. But that's what the law is. So there's a way out. You just need to apply for another assessment to get your biochar reclassified. So basically we've done that a few times in Victoria, and we're able to get biochar reclassified as wood. So that's a bit weird. So it was made from wood, it was turned into biochar, and then we got reclassified as wood to meet their waste duties. So Victoria's got kind of the worst possible combination, I think, of the waste duty requirements and the permission requirements. But anyway, I digress. A lot of the stuff about environmental protection and environmental protection of biochar is about getting the balance right between too much regulation and too little regulation. Too much regulation, what we can see what happens with too much regulation is the smallest biochar production facilities will need the highest tier of permission. Now there should be a tiered approach. So if you're producing a small amount from clean wastes with good technology, you just need an easy permission, just to fill out the form, you get it. If you're in the next tier, you need a mid-range permission. In Victoria, that exists. You can have a registration or a permit or a licence. Now, unfortunately, the only permission that exists in Victoria for biochar is the full deal, your full licence. They don't have the lower tiers yet, but we're trying to get those in. Too much regulation will prevent the use of biochar, which we've seen. Too much regulation will also lead to inappropriate waste classifications, which we've seen, and that's the situation in Victoria. And the result of that is industry development is stymied. Too little regulation. Now, I'm a firm believer in environmental regulation can actually be a benefit to the industry. So we don't want to see this. Asbestos found, the newspaper headline, asbestos found in biochar in school garden. Most of you will have heard about the asbestos in mulch issue, which is blown up and in New South Wales and come south of the border and blown up, and they've just closed down one of my clients in Victoria because he makes recycled hardwood mulch out of demolition waste, and they assume it's full of asbestos, which it's not. So we don't want to see that headline, ever. So the regulation can give you some protection in regards to that. So, too little regulation can also be a bad thing. Too little regulation, we can see a whole lot of people making a whole lot of biochar out of a whole lot of different types of high-risk waste in an unregulated way. Too little regulation will also be no recognised standards, and biochar will become seen as risky in terms of contamination, and no one wants that. The best way to avoid that is to set the standards, understand standards, and adopt and use those standards, which the industry is doing. Just some quick observations. Environmental regulation is not going away, but It should be risk proportionate with tiered permissions. Process should be clear and predictable. Should let me read that. And biochar industries only get bigger, but there needs to be greater recognition of the benefits to the industry of environmental regulation. And circular economy with waste is pretty hard, because a lot of the environmental regulation is actually built around the non-circular economy, which is now being applied to that. So we're getting layers and layers of quite complex regulation for things which possibly don't need it. My other observation was avoid potentially contaminated feedstocks. So rather than the feedstocks find biochar, we want biochar to find the best possible feedstocks. You know? So don't be driven by the availability of a feedstock if it's risky. Go for a feedstock which is always lowest risk if possible. And I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
That was nicely timed, Ben. We can tell you're a pro. I bet there's lots of questions for Ben. Is there any clarification questions? Bearing in mind we've got the discussion session. Yes, Nigel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ben. I've got to make comment on that. I think it's great. And I think the key point is that ANSBI has to lead. And because if we follow, we're going to be put into stuff that just doesn't make sense. So, I've got 40 years working as an environmental scientist. The law is mass. And, quite frankly, we're producing biochar in Victoria. We followed all the regulations, but we're doing nothing. It's an environment which is totally against investment. Our biochar, they want to classify that as sawdust. And they're using the hazardous waste code incorrectly. So I think we've just got to get in there, work really hard, educate, and get the regulations that are going to work for exactly as you said, Ben, good biochar, it's not contaminated with material.
There is a little bit of light on the horizon, hopefully, in Victoria, because the EPA just finished dealing with digestate. They said they're going to start working on biochar, and hopefully we'll get some sensible action there.
Yeah, and just to give you an example of how weird our system can be, we set asbestos and mulch. I was in Queensland, someone was selling asbestos at a market in Tiger Eye is asbestos.
Yeah.
So, in one hand, people are doing things. On the other hand, EPA is regulating. And unfortunately, in our society, with the group that wants to do things the right way is actually disadvantaged. They're sitting there waiting 12, 18 months, 3 years for approvals. So we've got to get together. It's a key purpose of ANSBI to make sure that common sense prevails.
Thank you, Nigel.
Ben, I know you're helping us with that. Keep on the journey.
Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
Thanks.
Appreciated.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Some good points there, and I know Craig's done a bit of work in New South Wales, and the question is if you then reclassify the product that we use waste into not waste, then we'll have issues getting corks as well, because we have to use the deemed waste to get our carbon removal certificates. There's lots of problems and ifs and buts. Anyway, thank you. So back to our program, and our last speaker for today, followed by some discussion. I'd really like to give a warm welcome to Dr. Heather Holmes-Ross, Mayor Dr. Heather Holmes-Ross. Heather is the Mayor of the City of Mitcham, and I worked with Heather on the Murray-Darling Association when I was an elected member. She's held this position since 2018. She's very well liked in her region. She's the chair of the Greater Adelaide Regional Organisation of Councils as well, so she has some pull there and influence over the types of things that are coming that it would benefit local governments, especially Biochar. And she sits on the Local Government Association Board and the Local Government R&D Committee as well. She does have a background in physical chemistry, so she understands biochar and its applications and a small business. And she has run a small business in Blackwood as well, a cafe. She's keen interest in sustainability and social equity and believes that many solutions to climate change are well positioned to address these issues. So Heather, we've strategically placed you at the end of the day because we'd really be interested in your thoughts on where local government comes in and what we can do as an industry to work better with local government to progress our roadmap rollout. So please, over to you, Heather. Thank you.
Thank you all. Graveyard shift. So I use notes for my PowerPoint, so I have notes here and the screen here. So if they don't match up, just yell out if things aren't making sense. Welcome to the City of Mitcham. Mitcham is a medium-sized council. We go, Crossroad is our border, South Road, then we go back along Sturt Gorge and along the freeway. So we're what we call a medium-sized council in Adelaide, but you're on my land, so welcome. I'd like to also acknowledge that we actually are on Ghana land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Hold on, I'm going to change the view because the things I want aren't here. Again. Sorry. So today I've been asked to speak about things from a local government perspective, and I thought towards the end I'll talk about how we fit into this, but I thought that I'd give you a brief outline of how local government works, because I'm not sure how many people know that. I'm sorry the slide wasn't that green when I'm at home, but it's City of Mitcham issue. There's not as much of it on the other slides. So as we talked about, I'm on the LGA board, I'm chair of Garrock, but I'm also council's representative on the East Waste board. So I do have a keen interest in waste and what we do. So fun facts about local government. First thing is that we are a creation of state government. State government own us, they rule us, they could close us down in a day if they wanted to, but they don't. They would rather use us as a punching bag. That's okay, we're used to that. We're governed by an act, and the roles and functions are very well defined. And I thought I'd just show you the roles. And the bit that's interesting here, oh shit, it's all working for me. What do I point at? I did. Oh, the arrow? Oh, the backwards arrow. Right, there we go. So these are the principles under which council operates. And the two that are interesting in this context are B and C, I think, because it shows an absolutely explicit role to care for the community and the environment, and I believe that includes the mitigation and the adaptation to climate change. So it's absolutely our business. You might have heard of the Office of Local Government. Don't contact them. They have nothing to do with us, really. There is a minister that's responsible for local government, and that's his office, and they consult with councils. And there's this fantastic line here. Local government is made up of 68 councils which makes decisions without the intervention of state government. That's the most hilarious thing I've ever read. If we think about waste and getting rid of waste at the moment, there's trials across the City of Adelaide to remove household waste once a fortnight rather than weekly. Oh, the state government is tightening their legislation at the moment. So I just put that in because I find it funny. The roles within the council are interesting. we have elected members, we have a mayor, we have CEO, and we have council staff. And from the outside, we're council. And so people will come to various elements of that council, not actually knowing the duties or their purpose. So elected members are elected by the public. The mayor is an elected member, and we employ one person and one person only, and that's the CEO. And the CEO employs all of the staff, and he runs the organisation. So mayors and elected members can't do anything unless the rest of the chamber agrees. And if you think of a council, they're different to state and federal parliament because you're not there as part of a party, you're all there as individuals. So, caucusing outside meetings isn't allowed, and so it means that no one person can promise you anything. It's the same with the CEO. The CEO makes decisions that he has delegation to make, but essentially all decisions of council need to be made by the chamber. And if we're spending any extra money, that has to come to the chamber. We approve the budget. So if you're thinking of approaching a council, the reason I'm telling you this is because you need to get at least the elected members and the mayor and the CEO on board to get anything through. If it's a great idea, we can do that easily. If it's not so good idea, you might have trouble, although I've seen some really stupid ideas come through, so it could go either way. Now, the Local Government Association are essentially a advocacy board. I've got up here a body corporate, and their purpose is to promote and advance the interests of local government. That's awesome, but it means that there's a lot of masters. So the local government is broken up into two parts. SAROC, which is the South Australian Regional Organisation of Councils, and they're the rural councils. There's 49 members. The GAROC is the Greater Adelaide group of councils, and that's the committee that I chair. And so there's 19 councils that make up that group, and that includes Gawler and Adelaide Hills, but not Mount Barker. Not sure why, but we'll go with that. So there's three kind of in-between councils, which are Gawler, Mount Barker and Adelaide Hills. I have more to tell you on that. Here we go. So the regional councils are represented by 6 regional boards, and so there's regional groupings. There's about between 6 and 8 councils that come together at each of those board levels, those regional levels. GAROC is different. We come together all as one. But talking to the regional boards is a really good idea because then you talk to a group of councils. And there's been this repetition today about how this industry really needs to be looking at the whole region rather than just one piece. And so I think if you were going to approach a group of people, then, for example, the Eyre Peninsula councils or the Southern Hills councils as a group is a great way to start. I was saying before, the LGA is a difficult beast because it has so many masters. It has the elected members, it has the mayors, it has the CEOs, and it has the people that work for council. And when you're meant to represent all of those interests, it gets very, very difficult. And so the LGA like local government isn't a homogenous group. And so it is troublesome sometimes for the LGA to represent all of council. So you will find sometimes that their best option is to stay quiet, but they are a great way of getting to all of council. So they're great information disseminators. If you can get yourself in front of the LGA, and I'll try very hard to do that for this group, then you're on a winner, I think. So inside the local government bubble. So this is where I live. And here I'm trying to, I suppose, talk about the realities of local government. There is excellent representation. There's a fantastic ratio of people to elected member. In Mitcham, the ratio is about 3,500 people to one elected member. So you can really very, very easily talk to your elected member. We know exactly what's going on the ground in our communities. Elected members are very, very passionate. And local government presents huge possibility because we do hear exactly what's going on. On the downside, we are the most highly scrutinised level of government. We consult on absolutely everything. If we're going to build you a footpath, we'll consult on that just in case. And what you'll say, half of you will say, I love that footpath, and the other half of you will say, I hate that footpath, and we will go ahead and build it. So we're highly scrutinised, and because of that, we're really, really risk averse. And what has happened recently over the last two terms of state government is we've seen this real push, which started with rate capping, to keep rates very, very low. And that was never explicit in the role of council or the functions, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for councils to take risk when we have this pressure all the time to keep rates low, because if we spend money and we don't spend it wisely, we get in so much more trouble than if the federal government were going to spend 300 something billion on some submarines. That's okay. But if we waste $10 of your rates money, we're in trouble. I wanted to show you the diversity across the sector in terms of climate, the climate emergency. So 10 out of the 19 Greater Adelaide councils have declared a climate emergency. So we're about half in Metro Adelaide. In the regions, we've got 7 out of 49. So I think there's a climate emergency. Some of my fellow mayors may not be so convinced. The LGA did declare a climate and biodiversity emergency last year at the OGM. That was a motion brought by my council, brought by Mitcham. And apparently it only got over the line because it was the same weekend as the gather round, and so there wasn't enough accommodation in Adelaide for a lot of the rural mayors, and so we were able to sneak this climate emergency over the line. So we do believe that there is a climate emergency. The issue there is that if you're going to talk to rural councils, don't go in firstly at a climate action level. It's for them, it's going to be all about economics. So the opportunities in terms of biochar, your biochar industry and local government, I think are fabulous. There are immense opportunities. We can create a market for the products. We do. Roads, rates and rubbish is exactly what we do. So I was talking to Dave in the first break or second break, I think, who makes roads. And I was like, that's so exciting, we can get biochar into our roads. In Mitcham, we already have crumbed rubber in some experimental roads. We have glass, and we also have Coke bottles, water bottles. So we're trialling different types of roads. We'd love to trial biochar in roads. We are also creating renewable energy, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit later. We also, as a group, can obviously provide the starting materials. We produce waste, tonnes of it. We do send our green waste to Jeffries. I'd like to acknowledge Lachlan sitting here in the front, and he was telling me this morning, I didn't realise, but they've been in the biochar game for over 20 years. So all the East Waste councils, that's 8, East Waste is a subsidiary of mainly the eastern councils, and they're essentially a trucking company that deliver our waste. But all our green waste goes to Jeffries, and that's used to compost, and some of it is turned to biochar. The other cities send their waste either to Pete's down south, or some of it's, they're calling it capping. We use it for capping. I call that landfill, but some of the southern councils call that capping. So I think that there are ample opportunities for us to work together, and certainly at Mitcham we're open to it and looking for it. So if you're looking to partner with us, what is it that we can offer? Cheap finance? Woo! Now you want us, don't you? We have access to the Local Government Finance Authority, so we can get money at a cheaper rate, so that makes us a little bit attractive. If we collaborate or partner with a group, that lends a degree of trust, a huge degree of trust to that collaboration. We're about as trusted as a group of councils. Councils are trusted at the same rate, let's say, as the RAA. So we are a trusted level of government, far more trusted than the state or the federal level. We can get to our communities really quickly, so we're quite good in our education and a role model role, and we do have the capacity to listen to our community and to pivot quite quickly, even though sometimes the wheels of local government can move incredibly slowly. Right, I'm on it. I wanted to give you an example of how Mitcham has been able to work well collaboratively quite recently. We looked at our emissions profile across the city of Mitcham, and we found that the highest creator of emissions was through power, so residential and business power usage, both gas and electric, and that was at 60% of our city's emissions. So we wanted a way to lower that. So we went to tender looking for solutions to lower that. And what we came up with was we called it a community renewables program. And we thought that companies would want our money, as I was just bragging to you about how we have it. But what we found they really wanted was that brand recognition, that trust that's linked with council. So we went to tender looking for a company that could provide a solar solution. And we had 200 firms download the document. We had 14 real expressions of interest, and we chose one collaboration partner. And what they're able to do for our community is to get solar panels and batteries on their roofs at no upfront cost. And we're also we're creating with them a virtual power plant. So Mitcham is putting in a ton of batteries that we own because we realise that the answer, as someone said before, is for renewables is storage. So our end goal is to be able to generate enough renewable energy within the city of Mitcham for it to be self-sustaining. And we've been working on this for about 18 months, 2 years now, and I've been telling everyone this is really good, you should do it. And for 18 months no one's listened, but just really, really recently we've got 5 other councils on board absolutely following what we've done, and we've got another 60 that want us to present to them. SAPN have said that's brilliant, you're going to stabilise our network, we love you. And the South Australian Chief Entrepreneur renamed us the City of Innovation, so I do feel a bit proud about that. So this is the type of thing that we can do, is we can collaborate with groups. What we need though is cost-effective outcomes and to understand the risk. We will take risk, but we just need to know upfront what that is, because we have to be very, very sure and very careful when we're spending ratepayers' money that we're spending it wisely. So as I said at the very beginning, we do believe that there's a climate emergency. We declared that in 2019. And anything that we can do which has tolerable risk, but that will help, we will consider. I think that's all I've got for you. What does that say? Thank you. It does.
Thank you, Heather. That was
That's a
fantastic.
pleasure.
We've had Heather, a dignitary, sitting with us all day, and really the formalities is to acknowledge Heather at the start of the day rather than the end, but it's been great to hear what you've got to say and how we can bring this all together. Is there any questions from our board or anyone for Heather at this point? Oh, I've just got some water.
You're all just wanting your cup of tea, I know.
Thank you, Heather, very much
Oh,
for your
thanks.
presentation. Really
Lovely.
appreciated it. Thank you again, Heather. Thank you, it was great. We are running a little bit over time, but we can catch up. We did have a panel discussion session, but I'm getting the sense that everybody's a little bit worn out. So what I will do is ask if anyone's got any questions at all or anything they want to bring up for any of the last lot of presentations. Otherwise, Don's got a 10-minute close to do, and I've just got a few thank yous. So any other questions or things that we want to bring up? I think as an industry and a board, we have our advisory board and we also have our executive board. And so there's a lot that's come up today and things that we'll think about and progress. And so if you've got any thoughts, please reach out to any of our ANZBIG board or advisory board members, and we'll progress it through our thoughts and the things that we're going to implement as we implement the roadmap. So before I get Don to come back up on the stage, I really wanted to again thank and ask our board to come out here. So I would like Nigel, who's on his computer, to come up. Craig, Russ, you're on our advisory board, come up. Phil, please come up. Renga as well from, Renga, are you here from Jeffreys? He had to leave. Brenton Mengerson, if you could come up, please, because he was on our, so this is our board, but I'm just bringing everyone up. We want to thank Brenton's on our organising committee for today as well. Heather was also on our organising committee, and Phil. So I just wanted to actually give you all some wine. Do we have some more wine here, Don? To say thank you. It was a thank you, but if anyone's got any questions of the board now that they're sitting, you're more than welcome to ask them. It was more a thank you. Board, does anyone have anything that they'd like to say for today? Any closing remarks that you would like to make? Please come up and make any. If you've all worn out and you think, yes, Nigel?
Yeah, look, I'm from Melbourne, but I'm really impressed with how much energy, enthusiasm there is for biochar here in Adelaide and in South Australia. And I think there's an opportunity in Australia for a state to become a leader in biochar. And I actually think that a state like South Australia is perfectly primed for that role. You have such a impressive leadership in agriculture and in water management, and I think biochar just fits the picture beautifully. So keep up the great work, and show the way for Australia. Thank you.
Okay, sorry?
I was just going to say, if anyone's not already a member and if you enjoyed what you've seen today, we don't have any funding externally at the moment, zip. So we're run completely on memberships and sponsors. So if you're in the position to be either of those, even as an individual, we really would welcome lots more members and spread the word. So.
Thank you. I think Don's going to cover off on that as well. So I just wanted you to, if you could please put your hands together for our organising committee, but also our board and advisory board. So thank you. You're welcome to sit back down if you would like to, or a couple of final thank yous before Don comes back up. Torbreck Wines as our sponsor. Don's going to thank all the other sponsors. Also, Internet Innovations. Bring internet to areas that are so remote. Telstra and Optus and the like can't do it. Internet Innovations do it, and we've used Internet Innovations today, and they've sponsored the event yesterday and today. So that is it from me. I hope I haven't forgotten. The only person that I haven't thanked yet is Don Coyne, who has been instrumental in all of this and is the backbone of ANZBIG. And Don is, a founding member of ANZBIG and has worked tirelessly for years and years to bring the industry to where it is today, and we wouldn't be here without Don.
What is biochar? Biochar is a charcoal-like product.
I'll hand it over to you.
It is made by heating any form of organic matter, biomass, in a controlled process with limited oxygen called pyrolysis. This product is called biochar when it is used as a soil amendment, or for other uses that store the carbon in a durable form. Through the use of these technologies, we can capture, utilize, and store carbon for the long term. We can reduce waste. We can produce clean and renewable bioenergy. And we can remove CO2 from the atmosphere. More than 50 million tonnes of residual biomass, including agricultural residues, green waste, and other organic waste, is burned or landfilled every year in Australia. This is a waste of a valuable resource. It also causes pollution, including greenhouse gas emissions. But these wasted resources can be turned into a solid form of carbon, biochar. Globally, every year, biochar could sustainably remove billions of tonnes of excess CO2 already in our atmosphere, while also enhancing food production and regenerating degraded lands. Over 99% of CO2 captured by biomass re-enters our atmosphere as part of the natural carbon cycle. Pyrolyzing wasted plant biomass into biochar intercepts the cycle and converts carbon into a form that is typically stable for centuries to millennia. Biochar is a sustainable and climate-friendly way to transform organic resources into a valuable carbon product and renewable energy for a circular, regenerative, new carbon economy. There are also many proven and emerging markets for biochar that increase profitability and reduce or draw down carbon. Agriculture, horticulture, livestock, cropping, animal feed to improve animal health and reduce methane emissions, soil carbon sequestration, water management and filtration, mine and land rehabilitation, building and construction. With more uses of biochar emerging, the global market is growing rapidly and is forecast to reach almost 4 billion by 2025. Australia is on the cusp of developing a world-leading biochar industry thanks to our testing, technologies, research and high potential resources. ANZBIG's Code of Practice is guiding industry best practice for sustainable production, classification and safe use of biochar. Australia's industry is ready to scale up and create important economic, social and environmental opportunities, becoming a billion-dollar industry by 2030. What is the next step? We need commitment and leadership from corporates, capital, government, entrepreneurs and academics. The Australian Biochar Industry 2030 Roadmap outlines a pathway forward for biochar industry scale-up. The roadmap has the potential to remove existing CO2 from the atmosphere, equivalent to 10 to 15% of Australia's annual emissions, provide 10,000 to 20,000 jobs in regional and rural areas, improve soil health and agricultural productivity, restore degraded lands to their true capacity. You can help put a foot on the brakes for climate change. Here's how. Share this video. Find out more at anzbig.org. Support the 10 key initiatives of the Biochar Industry 2030 Roadmap. Both financial and non-financial resources will help. Contact us to find out more. Show your support by taking the Biochar Pledge as an individual or an organisation, or join the Friends of Biochar community via our website. Join ANZBIG. We look forward to welcoming you.
Hello? Yep. Hi. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that today. Did you? Yeah? 4 out of 5? 3 out of 5? We do have a survey, so we'll put that up at the end. If you can just take a photo of that, you can do it later if you've had enough. I'll just go through. We talked about all this morning. We've now seen the video, and I just wanted to thank again the sponsors of the forum today. So KSI Sawmill, Victor, thank you. Jeffrey's Compost, Riverland Almonds, Phil, thank you. Highway Group, Dave, where are you? Over there, thank you, Dave. University of Adelaide, so is Hassan still here or he's gone? Vital Chemical, Carlos is gone. Forestry South Australia, they're gone, so they've all had enough. They overload, but they're thinking now. Sardi, and of course Metamorph Engineering. Thank you very much for sponsoring the South Australian Forum. So, okay, thank you. Thank you to these guys. You might have noticed these guys over here, Lance and it's Samuel again from Stage Right. So thank you very much. So if you would like to hire them for your next party, they're your men. So coming up next is the West Australian Forum. So we're going across to Perth. Believe it or not, I went for the first time last week, and I went to a VOCAG, which is the major ag conference. I was invited by Agri Futures to be part of a Platform 10 on behalf of ANZBIC Platform 10 Global Partner Network, which is a collaboration between Californian and ANZ growers. So there's some exciting opportunities to actually do a 12-year trial cycle. So what's happening over there in summer can then translate to our summer 6 months later. So it's very exciting. And I do have to say that we have finalised our program, and I'm also, this happened at the last minute today, but our keynote speaker is Nigel Murphy. So Nigel, we will get you up on the flyer. Nigel's going to talk about enabling mine closure and transition using biochar. So the mine closure and mine closure solutions provider sector is being touted as worth $4 to $8 billion to our economy. So biochar is a mine closer solution provider, and you heard about some of that today. So yeah, we've announced our program. It's now up on our events page. So yeah, we look forward to seeing those that can make it to Perth. We've got a range of sponsors, some of them also mentioned here, but others to mention: Energy Farmers Australia, Water Corporation, so biosolids. We've got C12 who do a biomix, cold biomix asphalt. Facera are taking oil mallee feedstock and turning it into biochar from cocci oil. We've got Deep Herd in WA sponsoring it. We've also got Regen Ag WA, Lottery West. Also, the following day, on March 22nd, we're very excited to announce the worldwide launch of a farmer's guide that's been written by two of our honorary life members, Professor Stephen Joseph and Dr. Paul Taylor of the Biochar Revolution fame, if you've ever heard of that. And that's going to be out at Wutating, which is on Lakes Farm. So there's a big shed out there. They're running sheep on 3,000 hectares out there. We'll be live streaming that as well. Our partners include the International Biochar Initiative, US Biochar Initiative, and European Biochar Industry Consortium. So yeah, you can book into that live and also virtually. So that should be fantastic, and that has been sponsored by Facera, but also the Department of Water and Regulation WA. So that was a big win for us, and yeah, it's all about healthy estuaries. So The Farmer's Guide is going to be a guide to the production, use and application of biochar and pyroligneous acid that I mentioned this morning, or the liquid smoke. So yeah, that should be really, really great. If you can make it over to Perth, I really recommend it. We also, in the evening of the forum, have our National Biochar Awards. So Nigel's one of our judges, Russ, you're another one, and Stephen Joseph are the judges. Some of the Hall of Fame nominations were here today, including Lynn McDonald, and also Adrian Morfitt from Earth Systems has been awarded the Hall of Fame award. So that should be, and Paul Taylor, who's put in a tremendous effort over many years. Come to the forum, go to the awards dinner, and then come to the Farmer's Guide. Maybe you could stay for the weekend and make a holiday of it. So the next steps for ANZBIG are that we're going to assist the implementation of the roadmap for 10 priority themes, 10 initiatives and 42 actions. So we're facilitating the establishment of 6 focus groups. So resourcing, education, communications, policy and regulations, market supply and development, standards and certification. What did I miss? Yeah, there's one more. So, yeah, but we've now got 60 people on the team, the Green Army, if you like, coming up with ideas, feeding recommendations up to our board who make pass the decisions, and then we've got to resource those recommendations. The other thing is that we did in the roadmap, Russ and Craig particularly were instrumental in this, making sure that we align to all the UN's SDG goals. We had Victoria in late August last year. We had New South Wales in late November, and that is on our YouTube channel. All the recordings, everything's on our YouTube channel. You can also access the shareable PDF presentations in our newsletter archives. We've had today, that'll all be available as well. I think we'll probably sell this recording online, or are we going to release it free? I've got to go through the board, so I'll have to wait to get a decision on that one. But there will be recordings of this. Of course, you'll all get a recording at no charge. WA next month, then we go to Tasmania. So Tasmania, May 7, and we also have the Farmer's Guide and workshop on May 8. Then we go up to Brisbane, June 20, and then out to Toowoomba at our member Pyrochar, where we'll run the Farmer's Guide workshop there on June 21. Okay, so, and that we're not thinking much further than the end of the financial year yet. We may go to Northern Territory, we may go to Auckland, so we're just floating that. The other thing we're doing is we're reaching out to other sectors now. So we did invite Aora, a composting peak body, and we did also invite Fertiliser Australia. They declined the offer this time, but yeah, there's real opportunities and synergies between those sectors for biofertilisers, obviously, and biocomposting. So if you do want to contribute to the implementation of the roadmap from 2024 now to 2030, the best thing that you can do is join ANZBIG if you're not already a member. And we do have a 1-month free trial, so if you don't like what you see, you can pull out. And the other thing is that once you do that, you can send an expression of interest for a focus group and get involved. Maybe you've got some really good ideas. So that's another really good way of helping implement the roadmap. Also, you could sponsor a forum. So we are still looking for sponsors for WA, Tasmania and Queensland. And then you can step up to become a roadmap sponsor. So bronze sponsorship is the lowest level, and it goes right up to diamond. And you know, some of our diamond sponsors, for example, are Earth Systems. We've got C12 as well. We have Waste Ecology. We have others. There they are there. Diamond, Carbon Standards International. So they're working on an ANZ Biochar certification scheme. Also we have the syndication group. So they're our silver and bronze. But we haven't even added all of our new roadmap sponsors from these two forums yet. So we will send the next version out shortly. Okay, so for more information, yeah, go to our Australian Biochar Industry 2030 Roadmap page, and we look forward to welcoming you. And those are my details if you want to get in contact. And Charles, that's it. Oh, dinner? Is anyone coming to dinner? Okay, so might want to go freshen up. Dinner's at 7 o'clock at the Arkabar Hotel. So just go into the bar area, and it's off to the left. You'll see a sign saying the South Australian Biochar Forum Networking Dinner. Okay, we'll see you there. Thanks, everyone.